Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University.
Dear students, I Dr. Shivang Patel, Associate Professor from School of Computer Science, Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University, welcome you all from Chaitanya Studio of Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University. We have started lecture series in which we have started shell programming. In the previous sessions, we have discussed how to create shell programming. We have already discussed what is shell, different types of shell. If you want to create any program in the shell, in that case, according to different types of shell, few of the syntax modification that you have to apply. Very basic editor, that is VI editor, we have discussed in the previous session. These three command mode, then last line mode and the insert mode we have discussed in VI editor. Also we have discussed positional parameters, in which we have discussed $1, $0 up to $9. So $0 that represent the file name, $1 that is the first argument. We have created the shell program in which we are performing arithmetic operations by using creating variables as well as the positional parameters. So these basic shell scripts that we have already discussed in the previous session. Now in today's session, we are continuing with few more shell script related with some advanced features, right? So in today's session, we are going to discuss decision making statements. So whenever you are writing some condition and you are requiring to execute few of the statements based on the condition will execute and whatever the result by that particular condition. So in that case, you are requiring these decision making statements. So in which you have to put any condition, and if the condition is successfully satisfied, in that case you have to execute some bunch of statements, and if the statement or if the condition is not successfully executing, in that case you have to execute few other bunch of statements. Such kind of conditions, if you want to put in your shell script, in that case you have to use decision making statements, right? So in Linux operating system or in the Unix operating system, basically these are the different decision making statements that can be supported. So in general, you can say that the if statements and second one is case statements. These two statements that you can use for decision making. Now multiple variations are there for if conditions, like if statement, if else, then after nested if, right? These are the different variations. Whenever you are using these statements in Linux operating system, mind well one thing, whenever the statement starts, you have to finish with the same keyword but in the reverse order. Say for example, you are doing or you are executing that if statement, then you can start your syntax with if, that is the keyword, and whenever your syntax will complete, you have to finish with the fi, that is just reverse of if condition. Same way, another thing, that is if else if. So in that case you have to use if elif. So not the else that can be used in other programming language that you already aware in C or C++ or Java. But whenever you are using Linux operating system, here in the shell you can use elif, right? So if then elif, then whenever this whole syntax that will finish, you have to end with fi, that is the reverse of if. Another type of decision making statement, that is case statements. So it will be completed with the help of the reverse, that is ESAC, right? So these two decision making statements that we have to discuss broadly in this session and the next subsequent sessions, right? So here you can see on your screen multiple syntax if you want to execute that particular decision making statement. So the first image that represent the if statement, if, then after the square bracket, then after you have to represent any expression, or you can say that the condition that you have to check, then after square bracket is completed, then you have to write semicolon and then after then. Here remember one thing, this is the keyword if, so you have to use as it is. Small letters are used as small letter, capital letters are used as capital letter because they are case sensitive. So all the letters in if, else and phi, whatever you are using, they are in small letters. Square bracket that represent the conditions that you have to put in particular square bracket for execution, right? If you don't want to put square bracket here, another option that you are having, that is test command, right? So here you can see in the syntax, if then after the square bracket. If you don't want to put square bracket, you can use test, T-E-S-T, that is the command. Then after the expression or the condition that you want to check. Then after, if you want to enter and then after you want to put that, then in the new line it is not required the semicolon. But suppose you are requiring then keyword in the same line, in that case you are requiring to put semicolon, right? Then after whatever the statements you want to execute, if the condition satisfied, that you have to write. Then after this block that can be ends with the phi, that is the reverse of if, right? That is the very basic syntax of if statement. Then after second one is if else. Now if, then after the expressions, here the condition will check if it is successfully executed this condition or successfully satisfied this condition. In that case, the then part that will be executed, whatever the statements under then, that will be executed. If the condition is not successfully satisfied, in that case the else part will be executed, and under the else part, whatever the bunch of statements or block of statements that can be executed, and the syntax ends with the fi. If you are not putting this fi, that is the ends of this if condition, in that case syntax error will appear while you are executing that particular code. Then after multiple condition you want to check, in that case you can use if elif block, or you can set the if else if block, right? So here you can see in the syntax if, then after the condition you have to put, then whatever the statements that can be executed you have to write here. Then after you want to check for another condition, you can write another condition in elif, that is elif, right? Then this condition will satisfy, then whatever the block of statement that can be executed after elif. Then after, at the end, if all the conditions that you have checked, then the else part you have to put here. If no condition will satisfy, in that case this else part will be executed, right? So under this else, whatever the statements that can be executed if no condition will satisfy in the previous all these if and elif statements, and obviously the statement or this block that will be finished with fi. Then after you can use nested if else statement. So if within if. So if you want to execute multiple if else statements within some particular statement, in that case you can use this. So first statement that you are using, that is the outer if. Inside that whatever you are using, that is the inner if. So you can observe here on the screen, first of all if expression, if the condition satisfied, then whatever the statement that you want to execute you have to write. Here you can write statement 1 that will be executed. Then after another if block that you are starting here, that is the inner if block, right? So if the outer if block satisfied, then and then inner if block will start executing. In the inner if block, if the condition satisfied, then and then portion that will be executed. If that inner block condition is not satisfying, in that case else part will execute. And then after, in the outer if block, if the condition is not executing, then the control cannot pass into the inner if block, it will directly goes out to the else part, and whatever the statements after else that will be executed. So this is all about the nested if. And then after the second decision making statement, that is the case statement that can be supported by the Linux, that is case. Then after $variable, var, that is any variable that you are using to check the value. Then after in, that is again the keyword, you want to check whatever the values available in variable, you have to check in all the cases available in this syntax. So pattern 1, pattern 2, then after you are using pattern 1 and just simply one parenthesis, and then after whatever the statement you want to execute, that you have to write. Remember one thing, each and every patterns or each and every case that must ends with double semicolon, that is the syntax. If you are not putting here double semicolon, then it will considering that the next case will be executed, right? And then after, this statement will ends with the reverse of case, that is ESAC. So these are the basic syntax for decision making statements, right? Now, relational operators that can be used in these decision making statements that you are using. So you can observe here EQ, that is for equal, then after any, that is non-equal, GT, that is greater than, then LT, that is less than, then GE, greater than or equal to, LE, that is less than or equal to. So whenever you are using if statement, decision making statement, you can use this relational operator, right? And in the case statement, you can use variable value, that is integer, character or string. So we are concluding this session. In today's session, we have discussed decision making statements, that is if statements and its variation like simple if statement, if else statement, then multiple if statement you want to execute, that is if else ladder. In Linux you can say that the if elif statements, nested if statements, and the second category, that is case statements, right? In the next session we are discussing practicals based on these decision making statements. Till then, keep learning. Thank you.